Hello, this is going to just be a quick introduction to what exactly we mean by GDP, or gross domestic product. So gross domestic product is the market value of all final goods and services produced in a country during a period of time. What it does is it attempts to measure the total production, but also the total expenditures and total income in an economy. In a future video that I'll link, we'll talk about the circular flow diagram that shows why the total production should equal the total expenditures and the total income in an economy. It's also a way of measuring overall well-being, although this is not perfect. And again, there will be a future video and I will link that as well. What the plan is for this presentation is to go through step by step the definition of GDP to show you what is included and what isn't included in that overall calculation and that overall definition of GDP. We start with the first part, which is the market value. So GDP is measured in the market value. It's not measured in quantities. We're not going to say something like the GDP is 5 airplanes. And the reason why we're not going to say that is because 5 airplanes or 5 pencils are very, very different. That provides different jobs, it provides different amount of wealth, so we want to have it in a market value. Currently, nominal GDP in the United States, as of the recording of this video, is $20.66 trillion. The next part of this definition is that it talks about final goods and services. And you can see one of these tweets that I sent out a few years ago that said, I look at the ingredients of food items, not because I'm health conscious, because I like to see what isn't included in GDP. Hashtag intermediate good joke. And what I mean by an intermediate good is something that is used in the production of another good. And so GDP only includes the final value of the product. It does not include these intermediate goods. For example, if I had a Snickers bar and I looked on the back and it said peanuts was one of the ingredients, that would be an intermediate good. We wouldn't want to count the value of the peanuts and the final value of the Snickers bar because the Snickers bar's value depends on the value of the peanut. So what we're doing is we would be double counting some of the values. So we only want to count final goods and services. The next part of this definition is the word produced. The word produce tells us that production needs to occur. There has to be some sort of production because remember, what we're going to try and get to is we're going to try and get to how this measures overall well-being in a society. And production is going to equal jobs, it's going to equal incomes, people are going to be able to afford better health care, a bunch of different things that we can help to set a proxy for overall well-being. Again, not perfect, but we want to have some sort of proxy that we can measure it, so things need to be produced. Because of this, GDP does not include things like stocks and bonds or what we consider transfer payments. Transfer payments are payments by the government for which they receive no new good or service in return. For example, if there is a payment for unemployment insurance, they're not getting anything in return. So there's nothing that's being produced, so therefore it would not count in GDP. However, if the government decides to contract something out and it builds a new road or a new highway system, that would count in GDP. And that's going to be one of our components of GDP, which we're going to talk about later. The next part of this definition is it says in a country. GDP only includes products that are produced within the borders of a country. This is different from GNP, which I'll have a future video on as well, but GDP is just gross domestic product. It does not matter. It does not matter who's making the production as long as it's within the borders of the country we're looking at. This is to ensure that we're measuring the well-being of the country where the production is taking place, because where the production is taking place is where we're going to see the jobs, where we're going to see the income, and hopefully where we're going to see the increase in well-being. So remember, production will hopefully lead to jobs and income, which will hopefully lead to overall well-being. And the last part of this definition is during a period of time. We only want to count the production that's happening during that period of time because we want to look at the overall production, income, and well-being that's happening when things are being produced. What this does is this says we are no longer going to be counting, or we're not going to count used goods, because if we count used goods, we're going to end up actually double counting the value when they were produced and then when they were sold maybe for the second, third, or 50th time. And what we want to do is we want to avoid that double counting. So that way we're really getting an insight into a country's overall market value of final goods and services produced in a country during that specific period of time. And that's the definition of GDP that we're going to be using throughout the next couple of lectures. And so really make sure you understand what is included and what isn't included in GDP.